The average person who follows traditional financial advice will work for 40 years and retire with less than they need. Not because they were reckless, not because they didn't try, because they followed rules that sound smart but are designed to keep you obedient, not wealthy. And the worst part? When you tell people these rules are broken, they defend them. They'll argue with you. Because they've been repeating them for so long, questioning them feels like questioning their entire life. Today I'm going to break down 5 money moves that the world calls smart that your parents probably taught you, that financial advice on the internet keeps repeating, and I'm going to show you why each one is quietly keeping you broke. These aren't risky ideas. They're not get rich quick. They're the simple shifts that separate people who build wealth from people who just manage money their whole life. I'm Major, and if you've been doing everything right financially and still feel like you're going nowhere, this is why. Smart move number 1 that's actually keeping you broke. Aggressively paying off all your debt before doing anything else. Now, before you close this video, hear me out. I am not saying ignore your debt. I am saying the obsession with becoming completely debt-free before you invest, before you build, before you do anything else is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make in your 20s. Here's why. Not all debt is the same. A credit card at 24% interest? Yes, attack that. Kill it. That is an emergency. But a student loan at 4%, a car payment at 3.9%, those are low interest debts. And every dollar you throw aggressively at a 4% loan is a dollar that could be earning 7 to 10% in the market. Let me give you the math because the math doesn't lie. Say you have $15,000 in student loans at 4% interest and you're putting every spare dollar, let's say $500 a month, toward killing that debt as fast as possible. You pay it off in about 2.5 years. You feel great, debt-free. But here's what you gave up. If you had paid the minimum on that loan and invested the difference, even $300 a month, into an index fund averaging 8% returns, over those same 2.5 years, you'd have roughly $10,000 invested. And that $10,000 doesn't just sit there. It compounds for the next 30 years. That early investment could be worth over $100,000 by the time you're 55. You traded $100,000 in future wealth to save maybe $600 in interest on a low-rate loan. That is not smart. That is expensive emotional comfort. The financially intelligent move is to destroy high-interest debt ruthlessly and treat low-interest debt as a tool. Pay the minimums, invest the difference. Let the math work instead of your feelings. Smart move number 2. Obsessing over your budget while never increasing your income. Open any personal finance thread online and you'll see the same advice repeated like scripture. Track every dollar, cut the subscriptions, stop buying coffee, make a spreadsheet. And look, I'm not against budgeting. Knowing where your money goes matters. But here's the problem nobody talks about. You cannot budget your way to wealth. You can only budget your way to slightly less broke. If you earn $3,500 a month and your expenses are $3,200, your entire financial life is a fight over $300. You can cancel Netflix. You can stop eating out. You can clip coupons and bring lunch to work every single day, and you might free up another $150, maybe $200 if you're aggressive about it. Or you could spend that same energy learning a skill that adds $1,000 to your monthly income, freelancing, sales, a technical skill your employer would pay more for, a side service you run in the evenings. Suddenly, the gap isn't $300, it's $1,300, and you didn't have to give up anything. The obsession with cutting expenses has a ceiling. There's only so much you can cut before you're living on nothing. But income has no ceiling. None. And every hour you spend optimizing a budget is an hour you didn't spend building something that generates more money. The people who build real wealth in their 20s are not the best budgeters. They are the people who got bored of managing small numbers and decided to make the numbers bigger. Focus on the income line, not just the expense line. That's where the leverage is. If this is making you rethink some things, drop a like on the video. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps more people find this. We're halfway through, and the next three are the ones people argue with me about the most. Smart move number 3, putting all your money into a savings account. This one drives me crazy because it sounds so responsible. You're saving, you're being careful, you have money in the bank, your parents are proud, and your money is losing value every single day you leave it there. Here's what nobody explains clearly enough. Inflation in the US has averaged around 3 to 4% over the past few years, some years higher. Your savings account is paying you, what, maybe 4% right now if you've got a high yield account, maybe 0.5% if you're still with a traditional bank. If your money earns less than inflation, it is shrinking, not on paper. On paper, the number looks the same, but what that money can buy is getting smaller every single year. $100,000 sitting in a savings account for 10 years at 0.5% interest with 3% inflation loses roughly $25,000 in real purchasing power. You didn't spend it, you didn't lose it, you just watched it become worth less while you thought you were being responsible. A savings account is a parking lot, not a growth engine. You need one, 3 to 6 months of expenses for emergencies. That's it. Everything above that should be somewhere it actually grows. Index funds, a Roth IRA, assets that historically return 7 to 10% a year and actually outpace inflation. The difference between someone who saves and someone who invests over 20 years is not small. It is hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it all comes down to whether your money is sitting or working. Make it work. Smart move number 4, following the go to university, get a good job, climb the ladder plan without questioning it. This is the plan, the one your school counselor gave you, the one your family expects. Get the degree, get the job, work hard, get promoted, work harder, get promoted again, retire at 65. And it works for survival. It will keep you employed. It will give you a salary. But what it will not give you is financial freedom, because the entire model is built on trading your time for someone else's profit and hoping they give you enough back to live on. Here's what the smart path doesn't tell you. Your salary has a ceiling. Every single job does. And that ceiling is set by someone else based on what you're worth to them, not what you're worth. The average raise in the US is about 3 to 4% per year. Inflation is about the same. So in real terms, you're making roughly the same amount every year. Meanwhile, the person who spent their evenings and weekends building a skill, a freelance client base, an online business, a personal brand, they didn't follow the plan. And in 3 to 5 years, they've created an asset that earns without being directly tied to their hours. I am not telling you to drop out. I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow. I'm telling you that following the plan with no deviation, no side project, no investment in yourself outside of your employer's interests is not the safe move everyone thinks it is. It's the slow move. And slow in your 20s, when compounding is at its most powerful, is the most expensive strategy there is. The plan should be your foundation, not your ceiling. Smart move number 5. Waiting until you know enough to start investing. I hear this constantly. I don't understand the stock market. I need to do more research. I'll start when I know what I'm doing. And I understand the instinct. Money is serious. You don't want to lose it. You want to be prepared. But here's the truth. You will never feel ready. Nobody does. And the research phase has a way of lasting forever. 6 months of watching YouTube videos about investing turns into a year. A year turns into 3, and every month you spent learning instead of doing, compounding was not waiting for you. It was working for the person who started with less knowledge but more action. You do not need to understand options trading. You do not need to pick individual stocks. You do not need to read 4 books before you open a brokerage account. You need to put money into a broad index fund, something like the S&P 500, set it to auto invest monthly, and then learn while your money is already in the game. The cost of being imperfect is small. An index fund might return 7% instead of the 9% you could have gotten with more advanced strategies. Fine. The cost of waiting is catastrophic. 0% for however long you sat on the sidelines, compounding nothing. Perfectionism, disguised as responsibility, is one of the most expensive habits in personal finance. Done is better than perfect. Started is better than researched. The best portfolio you can have is one that exists. 5 moves the world calls smart. Pay off all debt aggressively. Budget obsessively. Save everything in the bank. Follow the traditional path. Wait until you're ready to invest. They sound responsible. They sound safe. They sound like what a smart person would do. And that's exactly why they're so dangerous. Because nobody questions advice that sounds right, but the results don't lie. The people following this advice are not the ones building wealth. The people who actually get ahead are the ones who question the rules, run the math themselves, and make decisions based on numbers, not feelings. Pick one move from this list, the one you know you've been guilty of, and make one shift this week. Not a dramatic overhaul, one shift. Because small, early changes in your 20s do not lead to small results. They compound into a completely different life. I'm Major. Subscribe if you want to keep building. I'll see you in the next one. Stay superior.